So good morning, English 108 online. Just a quick little mini lecture here as you work on your cover letters and receive feedback on your resumes, just to highlight a couple of really important key points and to give you some of my fundamental thoughts on writing effective cover letters. So first and foremost, just a little announcement. I am currently working on supplying feedback on your resumes. However, that feedback is going to be a little bit delayed, and so I'm going to have to modify our schedule a little bit. And so I had intended to have those done this morning, and that does not look like it'll be the case, and there's a pretty good reason for this. Typically, in semesters past, Blackboard has allowed me to, in Blackboard, pinpoint comments on your documents. You would see a preview of your document in the screen, and I'd be able to identify and add feedback just like that, so that when you pulled up Blackboard, you'd see my feedback and you'd see where in the text it was referring to. Unfortunately, we've temporarily lost that functionality, which requires me now to download all of your assignments, read them, and then summarize my comments in paragraph form so that everybody can see them easily. It may not seem like a big deal, but if you extrapolate that over about 100 students, it adds a significant amount of time to the process. So I'm just a little bit behind, and my intention is to have that feedback to you within the next 24 hours so that you can then create your revision plans and ultimately revise your resume. So I hope that my Resume 101 mini lecture was helpful to you. I hope it identified some of the key attributes of a successful resume and that you got a good sense for the parts, the pieces, and the functionality of a resume. I want to reinforce to you that each employer deserves a customized resume. So if you're applying to multiple jobs, it's incumbent upon you, and it's important that you tailor fit that resume to meet their needs. And that means that you should make your resume responsive to what they do, how they do it, who they do it for. And each employer is a little bit different in terms of those things. They serve different people, they use different equipment, they use different materials, they specialize in a different area, they have a different niche. And so it's really important for you to customize your resume to meet those needs and to highlight those things. And we get that intelligence and we get that data from the job ad. And so that's why it's really important for us to use that job ad to sort of fuel how we structure our resume, how we emphasize things on our resume, how much space certain things on our resume gets, and in some cases what we include and what we omit. So I really want you to keep that in mind, and that's a fundamental thing. If you're sending the same resume to multiple employers, you are fundamentally doing it wrong. And the same thing is true of the cover letter. The cover letter is another place where it's really important for you to show that you're specifically tailoring your message to meet an employer's needs. So let me talk to you a little bit about the goals of a cover letter, just to reinforce some of the things that you're reading and seeing in this week's work that I hope will help you. There are a set of things, goals that you want to accomplish with the cover letter. So let me tell you something right up front. Historically, the cover letter was usually read before the resume, but in a day and age where we are it's more and more common for us to deliver these documents digitally, that process becomes less predictable. So what that tells us is that we have to allow our resume and cover letter to function almost independent of each other. They can't be too intertwined or too interdependent, because there's a good chance that the reader may read the cover letter first, but there's an equally good chance that they'll read the resume first, and so we need them equally to be strong. And I know this from talking to employers and folks who read these, and I know this from my own experience. Sometimes I just read the one that's listed first in the email attachment or in the portal, and so it's really important for us to keep that in mind. They can't be too inextricably linked. We have to make sure that they work independent of one another. So with our cover letter, there's a few things that we really need to pay attention to. First and foremost, we should use the cover letter as a way of giving the reader a lens through which to read our resume and understand us. We need to highlight through the cover letter what we think are our most exceptional or unique skills. In marketing, we call this our unique selling propositions. And so it's our chance to, through language, identify what makes us exceptionally and uniquely qualified when we're compared to other people in the job market. So what blend of skills, experience, credentials, licenses, education do we have that separates us from others on the market? And it's really important to identify those and think about what makes you unique, because chances are you're going to be applying against a lot of people who are qualified. So your job is not simply to be qualified, it's to be exceptionally and uniquely qualified, and I want you to keep that in mind. And so we need to identify that very early in the cover letter. So we want to do that. That's definitely something we want to do. We want to, in a succinct sentence or two, we want to name the things that make us exceptionally and uniquely qualified. The other thing that we want to make sure that we do is show compatibility and knowledge of the company. So, and this is really important. as I just got done saying, each employer sort of possesses its own niche and handles its and does its carries out its business in its own unique way. And so it's up to us to demonstrate that we understand that, we have knowledge of that, and that we're responsive to that. And so anything that you can do that shows that you have knowledge of who the company is, what they do, who they serve, and how they do it is really going to position you well. And so somewhere in the letter, it doesn't really matter where it is, it's important for you to demonstrate that type of knowledge. Again, that's going to it's going to differentiate you from other people on the job market, because the majority of people create a generic cover letter and they just simply change who it's addressed to and they send it out. There's no tailoring there. So it's really important for you to do that work, because it'll automatically put you in the top 25% of applicants. So that's really important. The other thing that I want to remind you is that this is a writing sample. So if the job that you're applying for has any level of writing involved, whether it's corresponding with customers through email, whether it's writing up quotes, whether it's writing reports or documentation, if writing is important, and it is important to most workplaces, you will be judged based on how well your cover letter is written. And so it's really important to keep that in mind, that in addition to doing the work that I just identified of highlighting your unique selling propositions, or the things that make you exceptionally qualified or uniquely qualified, and of showing compatibility with the company, it's also really important for you to take the writing seriously here. You need to communicate clearly, you need to communicate effectively. And part of that is making sure that you're showing, not telling. So you're going to make a series of claims about yourself, about your qualifications, about your experience, about your favorable personal qualities, your supporting or your soft skills. And it's really important for you, as we see in the example of the revised cover letter for this week, that you give some evidence of what that looks like. So if you are telling me that you are comfortable working independently in a fast-paced environment, show me what that looks like. Don't just tell me. Anybody can tell the employer something. I can make any number of bold claims about myself, but one of the things that we know, and probably one of the things that you learned in high school English classes or other English classes that you've taken, is that anytime we make a claim when we're trying to be persuasive, we need to support that claim with clear, compelling evidence. And so that evidence is likely to come from the things that you've done in the past. This is places where you can make reference to your education. This is a place where you can make reference to previous projects that you've worked on, or previous duties that you've held, or responsibilities that you've had. And this is a place for you to be specific. Specificity is credibility. The more specific you are here, the more compelling your argument's going to be. If you reside at the level of just telling me a series of things about yourself, I'm not likely to take you seriously, because I don't have the evidence or the data that I need to make that decision. So it's really important for you to construct this argument carefully. And so I want you to take heart and do that. And then the final thing that I want you to keep in mind is that you have the opportunity to show some level of enthusiasm here, right? Employers want folks who are enthusiastic, who are excited about opportunities, and your cover letter should embody this. That doesn't mean that you have to be gratuitously enthusiastic and be a cheerleader for the company, but it does mean that you need to show that you're ready to do this and that you're excited to do this. And really what an employer wants to see, and one of the things that you can prove through a cover letter, is that it's going to be a good fit. And you can do that through all of the ways that I just mentioned. Through a clear attention to their needs, by focusing their attention and giving them a lens through which to see you. You can do that by showing a level of compatibility with the company, by demonstrating knowledge of who they are, what they do, and how they do it. You can do this by carefully writing and constructing your argument in a compelling way. And you can do this by subtle language choices. So just be careful and be mindful of how you're presenting yourself through writing. The reality is you're not there to demonstrate your enthusiasm through things like the inflection of your voice or the mannerisms that you use. So you have to do that carefully through language, because you're not there to provide that type of context or those nonverbal cues. So just keep that in mind also, and that's really important. Ultimately, your job in the cover letter is to show, not tell. You should show what you're capable of and what makes you exceptionally and uniquely qualified. And if you do that, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. I think that you'll learn a lot about what an effective cover letter looks like through the power of revision exercise that we're doing, because the first version of that letter is very generic. It uses language that's relatively abstract. We can't really, ultimately what somebody should be able to do is read your cover letter and they should be able to envision, they should have an image of who you are and what you're capable of. When we use abstract, generic language, it's very hard to construct that image. So in some ways, a cover letter is like a portrait. It's a day in the life. It's giving us some sense of what you're capable of, and the way that we do that is through using concrete, specific language, which you'll see that they don't do in the first version of the cover letter in the Power of Revision exercise. The language is very abstract. It's hard to imagine. It doesn't create that image in the reader's mind. The second version, while it may go a little bit over the top and it's not perfect, I think does a much better job of showing what the writer is capable of to the reader, and that's ultimately the impression that we want to leave. So be on the lookout for the comments on your resume. I'll be giving comments on any number of things, included but not limited to your format and how you've actually laid the resume out, the quality of the information that you've provided, the order in which you present the information, and those types of things. So I hope that those will help to fuel you through your revision. And then next week, in week number 4, you'll have an opportunity to read a couple of other people's cover letters and provide feedback. And then I will be actually collecting these and grading these. And so my goal, as I've said, is that you will leave this class not only with an understanding of what a resume and cover letter are, but ultimately you will have in hand the best version of each of those documents you'll ever have. So that's it, and I look forward to checking out everybody's resumes, and if you need anything at all, don't hesitate to call, text, or email. Thanks. Bye.